Roll call, please.
Mr. Appel? Mr. Appel is present. Dr. Armstrong? Dr. Armstrong is not present. Mr. Birkin? Mr. Birkin is present. Mr. Castile?
Here.
Mr. Castile is present. Ms. Champagne? Ms. Champagne is present. Dr. Clark? Dr. Clark is not present. Mr. Harris? Mr. Harris is present. Mr. Hollis? Mr. Hollis is present. Ms. Holloway? Ms. Holloway is not present. Miss Mellarine? Ms. Mellarine is present. Mr. Morris? Mr. Morris is present. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Your consent agenda is ready for approval.
All right, is there a motion to receive? Mr. Birkin moves. Mr. Lance has seconded. Any objection? No objection. Motion passes.
Your first item is on page 6, item 3.1, consideration of a discussion regarding allowing online public schools to administer state assessments remotely and in a virtual setting. The recommendation is to receive.
Is there a motion to receive? Mr. Birkin moves. Mr. Harris seconds. Any discussion report? Yep.
Yes, sir.
Mr.
Thank you.
Superintendent.
So there was a conversation that our agency engaged with. I want to thank Caroline Romer and LAPCS for helping to bring the conversation to the forefront, as well as some of our online charter partners around would there be the ability to do state testing virtual for online providers of education. And one would think, well, maybe that's pretty simple, but as we've explored that, and they'll share their findings as well, but there are complications to being able to do something like that that would have to be resolved. But there was then a bill filed to allow for that to happen for virtual providers to be able to do their state testing, LEAP, et cetera, remotely from the student's home. And that bill did not make it through the process, and some conversations we had with the bill author, the legislator, members of the charter community who were in this space. We just agreed to begin to have some conversations about this matter at the board level. And I certainly think it's a conversation worth beginning, and I think it's a conversation that will evolve over time as technology evolves, and so we don't want to run from it. But at the same time, we have tremendous investments in our assessments that also have to be safeguarded as well. So, Mr. Lambert, I don't know if you wanted to make any comments, but go ahead, and then after that, I think we'll hear from some individuals in the space that also want to offer some comments as this conversation begins. Mr. Lambert?
Yeah, absolutely. That was perfect. And just want to say that we're really glad to have the opportunity to have representatives of families who are exercising a really valuable choice, which is virtual education in the state of Louisiana, where they're going to share their experiences and the importance of us finding solutions to the challenges that Dr. Brumley shared. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when and how. We look forward to continuing to work with them to identify solutions to these challenges, and we're looking forward to engaging with national experts on this as we think about what our future assessment contracts look like and making sure that this can become a reality.
All right, we'll move to public comments. We have a number of folks who would like to speak on this topic. We'll start with 4 folks. We'll call them up front. Please come and have a seat. Tanisha Arso-Frison supports the recommendation, wishes to speak. Mr. Dewan Johnson supports the recommendation, wishes to speak. Wade Henderson supports the recommendation, wishes to speak. And Linda Holliday supports the recommendation and wishes to speak. When you get ready to speak, please introduce yourselves. You have 3 minutes for comment. As others are making the way, we'll start with ladies first. Ma'am, would you like to proceed? And pull that microphone real close to you. Make sure it's turned on.
Okay, my name is Donisha Arso-Frison, and I'm from Gretna, Louisiana. Today, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to be present here and speak with you and represent families like myself. I'm here to appeal to you the importance of remote testing. Our daily routine, particularly during testing period, is extremely demanding. I wake my children up at 6 a.m. to prepare for a long day. After picking up other kids, because we do carpooling, as their parents has to get to work, we face a grueling drive from New Orleans, from Gretna to New Orleans, and it's usually anywhere between 40 to 2.5 hour drive, depending on the traffic. After dropping off the testing students, leaving and returning would only result in getting stuck in more traffic. So I stay in the parking lot with my other son, and we use my mobile hotspot for him to continue his schoolwork. After testing is complete, we face another we face more time in traffic, which is a result of another 40 to 2.5 hours, depending on traffic, because again, we live on the West Bank side of New Orleans. And this is repeated 4 to 5 times due to the fact that each day they have to go for testing. This process is not only exhausting, but also a disruptive in our daily life. It affects not just my children's ability to focus and perform well on their testing, but also their overall well-being. The unfamiliar environment of a testing center causes anxiety and stress for many students, impacting their performance. Remote testing from home offers a valuable solution. It allows the students to take a test in the comfort of their own home, which helps reduce anxiety and improve performance. It also alleviates the logistical challenges faced by families of ensuring all students have the fair opportunity to succeed without adding stress to the transportation and time management. Thank you for your time and your consideration, as it is a necessary step towards accommodating the diverse needs of families and ensuring that every student has the best possible chance to perform well. I urge you to consider implementing the remote testing. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Johnson?
Yes, my name is Dewan Johnson, and I'm the CEO of CSAL Charter Schools. And currently, we operate 2 of the approved statewide virtual schools, Louisiana Virtual Charter Academy and Louisiana Rebirth Blended Learning Academy. And so, again, I'd like to echo what Dr. Brumley said. We've appreciated the dialogue that we've been able to have both with Dr. Brumley and the LDO staff. I think it's been productive up until this point. We come to you with the appeal to allow those of us who provide virtual education in Louisiana to, as our parents said, for the benefit of our families. In addition to what she described, we have a number of students who have medical needs, it precludes them from on-site testing environments. We have a number of families who have other social needs that remote testing would be of a greater benefit to them. And really, these families chose virtual education because they saw that as a benefit to them and their children. And so providing them with the opportunity to test at home, I think would be a benefit across the virtual school community. Now, as Dr. Brumley also said, that we know that one of the necessary bridges that we will have to cross is ensuring test security. Well, at present, there are a number of states who are successfully testing their students in a remote environment, and we've had dialogue with those. We've sought to understand what they're doing and how they're doing it and how they are caring for the needs of their students, and also making sure that the tests are administered securely. And so, again, I think it's just a value add to our state, and particularly to our families, to explore further how we can bring this avenue of testing to the state of Louisiana.
Great. Thank you, sir. Ms. Holday?
Hi.
Hi.
Honorable Board, thank you, and ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Dr. Brumley, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I am wearing 2 hats today. One hat is the Board President for Foundation for Louisiana Students, which operates University View Academy, and then secondly, as a parent. First of all, as a board member, I would like to encourage you to travel down this road of looking at remote testing, because it is valuable to us. It is helpful to us. We are spending over $1 million each year just to have the remote testing for University View Academy. That's teacher travel, teacher hotels, teachers pay, whatever, proctors, you name it. It's over $1 million. That $1 million could be spent so much better somewhere else for our students. We believe that this is a good method to go about and to improve this process of testing our kids. But more importantly, the kids, our public school kids are a captured audience. They go to school, they take the LEAP test or the ACT test or the DIBELS test or whatever it is, and they go to school and they take it. We have to bring them to some place or get them somewhere to take these tests. That does not always work. They will not show up. And then it's punishing the school for doing their best to get it done. Remotely, we are in an environment that AI is out there, and we can improve the process of testing. My second hat that I'd like to wear is that as a parent. I know most of you don't know, but I had raised 7 children, 6 of whom were foster children that I adopted. 4 of them graduated from University View Academy. If I had not had University View Academy, they would not have graduated. They went to other schools and were asked to leave because of their emotional and mental health issues. And at home, we were able to sit around the kitchen table. I took a leave of absence from practicing law just so I could teach them. And my kids survived getting a high school diploma. 4 of them survived getting a high school diploma because we had this online school. Then we had to take them and send them to a different environment to take these tests. They never did well on the test. It wasn't the same. They weren't in the same environment as our public schools are there. Public school students are able to take their tests in the same environment that they learn. But our students are learning at home in a quiet, reserved environment, not being bothered by other kids or being a problem to other kids. And then they have to go and take these tests, and they never did well on these tests. So I'm asking you as a parent to really encourage this movement towards a remote testing. But more importantly, we'd like to ask you that we would love to volunteer to be a project, a sample project or a remote project to help make this project work. We would like to volunteer to help you, test it out, be a part of it. This would be our goal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Henderson?
Good afternoon. Thank you all for your service to the children and families of our state. My name is Wade Henderson. I'm with University View Academy. I'm an employee now, but long ago when my hair was brown, we were negotiating and discussing starting an online school in 2008, 2009, 2010 before we received our charter. In those days, we didn't really have a lot of the computer security that we do now. In fact, we didn't have the computers in our pocket that we do now. We had phones, but they weren't smartphones. Mr. Ken Bradford put together a committee in 2009 that discussed every other month we would meet a large group here in the Department of Education and discuss how to best make online work for Louisiana. We were the 30th state to start having to have an online school, but it was a new thing for us. The biggest concern in 2009 was the security of the test, because at that point, computers were still a relatively small part of our lives, and state testing, as standardized testing as it presently is, was still relatively new. There were a lot of new aspects about all of this in 2009. But now, 15 years later, we've had, as far as I know, no questions about integrity of our tests and such, but we've had to, as President Holliday was just saying, we've had to jump through lots of hoops and go over make lots of obstacles work out to be able to have our testing have integrity. So I'm asking that you please do consider moving forward with the idea of allowing our children to test in the same location where they learn. That does make a big difference. We've seen that over and over. There were some new examples. But that's really all I just want to say that in 2000, think of the difference in 2009 and the concern about security. We didn't do online banking then. We didn't do all the various things that we do online now. And everyone, that was the number one concern. If the desire of the test is to know how well we are serving the children you've entrusted to us, it seems that we could put aside the idea that computers are unsafe, at least to the degree that they were in 2009, and really look seriously at the idea that if a child takes the test in the same place where they learn, you're likely to get a much better idea of what they've learned and how they're doing in school. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, folks. Next up, we have another group of 4. Lakeisha Chambers supports the recommendation, wishes to speak. Caroline Romer waives. Nadia Seals supports the recommendation, wishes to speak. And Herman Brister also supports the recommendation and wishes to speak. And again, please introduce yourself with your name and make sure the microphone is real close to you.
Good afternoon, Board. I'm Lakeisha Chambers, Deputy Superintendent at University of Louisiana. We educate up to 4,000 students across the state of Louisiana. Historically, we spend over $1 million per academic year on standardized testing. To accommodate our testing needs, we rent over 30 facilities and utilize testing sites across the state. In addition to large meeting spaces, we have to find sites that will allow us to test students in small groups, as well as our individual testers. As a public charter school, we value parent choice and flexibility. Our families chose us as an educational option because the virtual environment has proven to be beneficial for them. Equally important to note is that many of our students have medical conditions that impede them from being successful in in-person learning environments. Each year, we are inundated with phone calls and emails from worried parents about their students who have extreme social anxiety issues and those who are immunocompromised. Many of these students have diagnoses that would be detrimental to their well-being if they were forced to test outside of their home environment. Testing in person places an undue burden on these families, and it is common that they simply do not show up. When our students do not show up, we are penalized by receiving zeros for those students on their assessments. We are asking this board to prioritize high-return options for our medically fragile students and to consider the wishes of the families of the 4,000 students who have chosen remote learning as their educational plan. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Next? Yes, sir.
Yeah, just point of clarification, you guys spend $1 million a year on testing, and that's for 4,000 tests, is that right?
Well, currently we have 3,720 students, so somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 students. We can educate up to 4,000.
Okay, but you spend $1 million to test 4,000 kids?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Next, ma'am.
All right, good afternoon. Herman Brister, Director of State University, Laboratory School and Virtual School. Committee Chair Castillo, State Superintendent Bromley, and members of the board, thank you for allowing us to speak today. Quite frankly, our students and parents have made a choice to enroll in our virtual program. They are educated year-round or for 10 months out of the year virtually, and we would like for them to have the choice to be able to test virtually as well because of the undue burdens that they experience throughout the school year trying to travel and be accommodated for these tests. To provide more context to our plight in terms of virtual testing, I'm going to turn it over to our director of our virtual school, Ms. Nadia Seals.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you again for this opportunity. As everyone has already stated, you know, remote testing is very advantageous for our students who may have difficulty traveling due to physical constraints, health issues, among other reasons, as well as where the testing locations are. We are not as large as University View. We educate about 300 to 400 students a year. However, we have 8 different testing sites across the state, and we have to employ test administrators in all of these sites to make sure that we are making sure the security of the testing is there. We also know that many families, they opt out of testing, just as Ms. Chambers said, because the strain that it is for parents to come. A lot of times, the complaint that we also hear is maybe during the day they're at home, but they work at night. And so then the transition time that they're having to go through in the afternoon, leaving the testing site, hinders them from being able to work during the time frame of our testing. We know that the flexibility can help reduce the stress and anxiety on our students. As everyone has already stated, our students are learning from home. Our students are full-time virtual students. They do not come into a building other than when we are required to test. And so that requires a difference in what they are used to. It is a difference for especially students with social emotional issues. They struggle with testing. They may show up on the first day and they may not come back after that. We know COVID-19 taught us that at that time we weren't quite ready for remote testing. However, what we do know is if we become prepared, we will never have to worry about the learning loss again. We will always be able to test our students no matter what external issues happen. We will be prepared to be able to test our students remotely if we do this. We are in a very technology-saturated era, and it's important that we prepare our students for the next level. We know that many states and companies, such as even Praxis, people can take Praxis at home right now. The same thing that we're asking teachers to take this test, they can do it from their home. There are at-home tests 7 days a week for Praxis. So we're just asking that you please consider this opportunity for our students. We know a pilot in Louisiana would be on the forefront. We know that this will be an opportunity for us to be ahead of some of the other states versus behind. And we know that we've made great strides prioritizing the needs of our students. And so we come today just asking that we ensure we're prioritizing the needs of all of our students in Louisiana. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, folks. I think, yes, Dr. Armstrong.
So, quick question. I've heard a couple times that you're saying y'all are spending over $1 million for testing for 3,700 students. What's that money going to?
The renting of testing facilities.
Okay.
We have to hire additional technology staff to be assigned to those sites. Some of the sites we have to have additional internet access boxes. We rent churches, we rent hotels, we rent any facility we can find that is large enough to accommodate us.
Okay, so at one time you had a couple of brick and mortar locations across the state. Do you still have those locations, plus you need additional locations?
We don't really
You
utilize
don't-
brick and mortar schools.
Okay.
We have universities that we partner with. and some
Okay.
community colleges. We also have to reimburse our staff for travel away from their homes for the weeks that we have to test our students because we utilize our own UVA staff as well as hired doctors to make sure we have enough testers to accommodate our students.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Great. Any more questions from the board? Mr. Morris?
I had a couple questions, but I think mine are for Mr. Lambert. Superintendent, I think he's the subject matter expert here, is that right?
I mean, we call him other things.
I'm going to stick with Mr. Lambert. So, Mr. Lambert, I'm just curious, there was some reference to potential for this practice to be in place at other states right now. Based on your research or whatever, are you familiar with any other states where this practice is in place already?
Yes, there are. None of them use the same assessment vendor that we use. Our assessment vendor does not have a secure browser that can support this at this time, though they do have it on their roadmap in like medium term to be able to do that.
So other states implement the practice, they just don't use the same vendor?
That's correct.
Okay. I got a couple of really interesting, I guess, emails during the testing period. One of those I share with you, to where, you know, we're having, some school districts are actually using wands to check students as they walk into the building, because as they give up one cell phone, they got the other cell phone in their pocket. So they're having to be wanded to go in to take the test. So I appreciate the sensitivity around the security and whatnot. But I also took the praxis. I took the math praxis during COVID. So I took it remotely. So I'm familiar with the process they use for security. And I'm wondering, is there some sort of standard or best practice that they use for security purposes? Any intel on that?
There are national experts that support different groups that are trying to do virtual and remote assessments. For example, Cavion is a group that we have a contract with now that does test security for us, and they support folks in thinking about what all the policies they need to put in place and what the security measures they need to put in place are to make sure they can have a valid, reliable test. So the context is different from state to state, vendor to vendor, and test to test.
But there are standard practices out there that we could consider for review.
There are certainly experts in the field that would offer their support to help us identify the things that we need to do in order to do it safely, securely, and provide high-quality, accurate assessments, yes.
Okay, last question. Have you guys done any research to provide any cost estimate for, can we do it for cheaper than $250 a student?
We did several, the word just went right out of my head because we do it all legislative. Fiscal notes related to this, based off of discussions with experts in this field. They recommended that we create a breach form and do a variety of other things, and they still didn't recommend that we do it in our current setup. So our short-term cost would be around $1 million to just do it, and we would not be comfortable with the level of security still. So the short-term solution is not really a viable one, even if the money was available.
But we couldn't just contract it out to a vendor that's already got the stand, like the Praxis? You couldn't just contract it out to the people that provide security for the Praxis test?
You're talking about moving an assessment into a completely different, like secure browser setup, which might seem like a straightforward set of activities, but the resolution size changes, then the item changes, the scrolling changes. It's just not that straightforward, Mr. Morris.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? So what is the expectation, Dr. Brumley? You're gonna make some particular recommendations, Ms. Morris has some good questions, and sort of what's next?
Yeah, I think one of the things we could do is we could, we have an early policy brief on this item because we had to do some work legislatively. So one of the first steps we could do is just further refine that policy brief and make that available to you all as a board. And then that'll be a catalyst for additional conversation.
Okay, great, thank you. Thanks again, folks. There are no other questions. I don't see any objections to the motion. The motion then passes. Next item, please.
Your next item is on page 7, item 4.1, consideration of a material amendment to the Type 2 Charter Contract governing Vermillion Charter Academy. The recommendation is to approve.
Is there a motion to approve? Ms. Champagne and Mr. Morris seconds. Let's see. Is there a presentation? All right, we have recommendation to approve. We have a number of public comment cards. Mr. Gary McGoughlin supports the recommendation, wishes to speak. And then Bridget Nealon supports the recommendation but does not wish to speak. All right. Feel free to proceed when you're ready, sir.
Thank you, sir. My name is Gary McGoughlin. I'm the attorney for the Vermillion Charter Foundation. I also am the attorney for the Lafayette Charter Foundation, which is the corresponding party in the Cooperative Endeavor Agreement. That's a portion of this material amendment. Two things, and both of them are good. Starts with the success of the Vermillion Charter Academy that's going to open this August in Maurice, Louisiana. The original projections for budgeted numbers for students in the first year were 615, rising to a total of 765 in the third year. Instead, what we have found is this year we already have enrolled 943 students, of which 72 are in the 7th grade, 28 in the 8th grade. We also have a wait list of 249 students. That tells us a couple of things. Number one, we need more room. And number two, the take on the high school is going to be very high. That was one of the reasons we saw that the enrollment numbers for the 7th and 8th grade were lower than you might see for the other grades. The other grades ran from 107 to 131 students per class. We had 72 and 28 in the 7th and 8th grade. The concern there expressed by the parents was the ability of their students to be able to progress to a high school that had the same character, the same culture, strong minds, good hearts. And so the Vermillion Charter Foundation and Lafayette Charter Foundation have been entered into a cooperative endeavor agreement between the two to where the Lafayette schools that are opening, we have a new high school being built, we have a high school that was in the northern part of our parish that was opened last year. They have excess capacity, so it would serve both schools' interest to be able to have those students that are graduating from the 8th grade in Vermillion to be able to come to their Lafayette counterparts while the high school in Vermillion is being built. And we have confidence at this point, because of the success rate and the enrollment, that that high school will be built. The land has already been acquired. The high school would be immediately adjacent to K through 8 schools, so it's a win-win for everybody on that. That's the broad strokes on it, both with regard to expanding the cap on the number of students which we can serve. We've got more demand than we have allowed capacity at this point, and so we'd like to be able to serve that demand as well. We have the president of our foundation here, if you'd like to hear from her, Ms. Bridget Winters. We also have trustee Christy Touchette. I'm the designated spokesperson at this point. Any questions?
Any questions or comments from the board? Mr. Bergen.
How many current students do you have there at the K through 8?
We have not opened yet.
Oh,
So what we have, if you look at the page which is there, we have enrolled 943
Oh, I'm
students
sorry,
to
it's
start
right there.
class
Sorry.
in August of this year.
my apologies. I didn't look at the other page.
We're glad you asked the question.
Great. Other questions or comments? All right, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Any objection to the motion? That motion passes. Next item.
Your next item is on page 14, item 4.2, consideration of a discussion regarding the Type 1 and Type 2 charter appeal process. The recommendation is to receive. Updated backup has been distributed.
All right, may I get a motion to receive? Mr. Hollis? Ms. Hollis moves, and Mr. Berkin seconds.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Brumley.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Castile. So what we have learned is that there really isn't a process that's been adopted by the department or has been considered by Bessie when schools are a Type 1 charter and they have an interest in becoming a Type 2 charter because some type of friction exists between them, the operator, and their governing authority. And so it could be a friction, it could be a fact that contract negotiations break down, it could be that resources aren't flowing properly and fairly. It could be a number of different issues. And so we had heard some discussion from various Type 1s that they might have an interest in applying to Bessie to leave their Type 1 status and convert to a Type 2 status, which means they would be under your purview because you would be their authorizing board. And as we began to dig into that, what we learned is that the process really didn't exist. So our school choice team, our legal team, policy team began working on, I think the first step needs to be to establish a process if we get petitioned to do something like this, so we actually know how to handle a situation like that. And so what you have before you is a fairly simple process that our school choice team has outlined in the event that we are petitioned by a Type 1 to become a Type 2. As soon as I say this, I'll be proven wrong, but I think for the most part, everyone in the space tends to agree with the process and think it's a good start. And I think that we just wanted to make you aware of the issue as it exists. And this is not something that has ever happened in terms of codifying a process to consider a Type 1 moving to a Type 2, even though it was always possible. There just wasn't a process for giving that consideration and vetting. So that's what we have before you today, Mr. Castile, and I think you probably have some comment cards around this.
I do, sir.
And if they prove me wrong that they're not happy about it, we'll have to have a talk later.
Fair enough. We have 4 comment cards. Dr. Aaron Bindley supports the recommendation but does not wish to speak. Mr. Gary McGoffin supports the recommendation, wishes to speak. Ms. Kara Majari is here to provide information only, wishes to speak.
Good afternoon again. Caroline Romer, Louisiana Association of Public Charter Schools. I'll be really brief. I think Dr. Brumley did a nice job explaining what's on the table, but I do want to clarify and just make sure you understand. The law currently reads that there should be a process for this type of, here it's being called an appeal. In the law, it actually calls it a petition. So I just want to make it clear, this is currently in law. Our law is now going on 30 years. Next spring will be the anniversary. So the law anticipated that there might be times where a charter operator and its authorizer might come to some impasse related to contracts and those sorts of things. So we're a little late getting the policy in place, but we are really pleased with the collaboration we've had with the department to come up with hopefully a thoughtful process so that if this matter does come before you, you will have that process in place. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Castillo?
Yes.
Yeah, I had a question, Ms. Romer. So I realize you're not a lawyer.
I try to get away from the table really quickly.
Yeah. But I'm just curious, does the law, as you know it, does it speak to any specific criteria or any kind of hurdle rate with regard to the petition?
You're right. I have slept in a Holiday Inn, not lately. I'm not a lawyer, but no, it's not. It's not very specific to what. It just says that if the two parties cannot come to mutually agreed upon terms, that there should be this petition process in place. So how we see that from LAPCS, that could be everything from at renewal, when you are negotiating your contract, terms could be put in place that the two parties are not agreeing on, or it could be mid-contract. All charters have a contract. It could be mid-contract that the terms are actually not being met or followed.
So it's a non-compliance issue, basically?
Non-compliance,
Okay, thank you.
Great. Just talking to Dr. Brumley, while the heading says Type 1 Charter Petition to Bessie, the text actually refers to it as an appeal, and so they're going to look at perhaps maybe tweaking that language. Ms. Majori.
Oh, thank you. Kara Majori, for the last 2 years, have been the incubating CEO at New Schools for Louisiana. Prior to that, I spent about 6.5 years as the Senior Director of School Strategy at New Schools for Baton Rouge. So I have a lot of experience with this particular need. So this has been a need since 2018, so I want to repeat what Caroline said. Super pleased and very, very thankful to the team for taking this up and getting this through. We are looking at, in Baton Rouge alone, that we work with 6 operators in 11 schools, and now a new Type 3 school up in Caddo who have need for this backstop. I think we all have a desire to see the schools remain as close to the local population as possible and to work with the local school districts, but having this backstop and this process available and making sure that people are aware of it are important. There's a lot of financial capacity, reporting, and school model design issues that we're facing that take a lot of time, money, and capacity away from serving students, and we're super grateful to the team for that.
All right. Thank you. Mr. McGoffin?
Yes, sir. Gary McGoffin. I'm speaking personally right now, but based upon my experience in representing 5 charter foundations around the state, with 2 that are in formation right now, will be soon hopefully joining the family. Really appreciate the distinction on petition versus appeal, and the reason for that is when you get your first Type 1 charter, you're generally a newbie. You've never done this before, and so you don't know how it's really going to operate. As you go through the first year or 2, you find out perhaps the funds aren't flowing the way you think they should or that the charter provides, or you find out that, oh, we really should have had pre-K in our contract as well. And the Type 1 charter authorizer, the local school system, may not want you to have that feeder system of the pre-K. It may be essential to your success. I believe it is. So the fact that you can petition based upon the experience gained during your first term in your charter, and you can petition to Bessie if you're not able to come to a resolution with your local school board with the Type 1 charter, is invaluable both in those discussions and also providing some alternative to be able to go someplace else to get what we need. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions, comments from the board?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Holloway.
Dr. Bromley, I'm sorry. In regards to this petition, I agree with this. As a former startup director of a type 1, I'm trying to read this real quickly. Is there anything that indicates reasons, like a listing? Caroline could be the answer too. Like, I'm reading through it, but is there like suggestions? Like, is it trying to think, negotiate, control, or in disagreement of the curriculum that type 1 uses? Is it finances? Is it, I don't know if we can maybe make a list of suggestions. I don't know what this entails. Can y'all help on that?
First, let me say, we've been
Wait,
working.
Ms.
again-
Caroline,
Yeah,
Superintendent.
I'm going
Sorry,
to
I was
defer
gonna
to Caroline to go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
And then I'll follow you.
Well, I was actually going to recommend that Ms. Gilson is here, if you would
Yeah.
prefer that she come to the table. She wrote the policies.
Yeah. Ms. Gilson on our school choice team also shares the belief that this is a petition, I know.
Sorry, I did read that, but I'm like, well, I was reading it going, okay, what do they think this means? In, correct. That's right.
Oh, there we go. I didn't listen to the Garvey rule.
But would it help to put those types of,
I
or you
don't
want to just
think
leave it?
You should probably not have
Well,
something
et
where
cetera.
you have a
Okay.
list and allow something to be open.
It'll give them
So
ideas.
that, exactly, so that we can go in and do the inquiry that we need to do as a department.
Perfect. All right, thank you. Thank you for this. This is great.
Great. Other questions, comments? Any objection to the motion? Motion passes.
What's the path forward on this?
The question is, what is the path forward on this? Wait and to see if we get any petitions,
That's
Dr.
right.
Brumley?
That's right.
Yeah. I suspect there will be petitions.
We're not going to advertise for petitions, but if we receive a petition, we'll do
You
it.
might have to grow that office, Dr. Brumley. All right, next
That
item.
concludes the agenda.
All right, we are adjourned.